Let's go Eagles! The moves don't stop, and the Philadelphia Eagles led by Howie Roseman continue to be the talk of the town this offseason. Calculated risks, undervalued signings, and a proposed rule change that has the rest of the league on the warpath. This offseason has been anything but peaceful. So, let's get started because what's happening in Philadelphia right now could define the next season. I'll tell you everything. But first, make sure you've already hit the like button if you agree with me that the Eagles will win another Super Bowl. Man, I really believe in that. Our team has great potential to get there again. If possible, write it like this. Go Eagles! Let's win the Super Bowl again. Now for the news. First, let's talk about one of the biggest stories, Brandon Graham. If you're an Eagles fan, you know that name carries weight. A 15-year career, 487 tackles, 76.5 sacks, and the most forced fumbles in franchise history? Yeah, he's a legend. The guy bleeds green. And while his time on the field may be coming to an end, he's already hinted that he'll be around in some capacity. He even mentioned having conversations with owner Jeffrey Lurie about a potential role with the team. So could we see BG on the Eagles' sideline as a head coach or in a front office role? That's something to keep an eye on. Now, while Graham's status is still in question, the Eagles have brought back a key piece to their defense, Zack Baun. If you're not excited about that, you should be. This guy was a defensive force last season, making 151 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 1 interception, and 5 forced fumbles. And here's the thing, he never really wanted to leave Philadelphia. He's all about what the Eagles have built, and that's exactly the kind of energy you want in your locker room. His return stabilizes a defense that, despite some key departures, still has 8 of its 11 starters from last season returning. But it's not just Baun. The Eagles added another name that could be a steal, Azeez Ojulari. Now, some people might look at his numbers and think, okay, he's solid but nothing crazy. But here's what you need to understand. Ojulari's sack totals are well above average, and he has a knack for converting pressures into sacks. He's not the fastest off the snap, and he's not going to wow you with insane athleticism. But this guy just knows how to get to the quarterback. And at just $4 million per year, that's a low-risk, high-reward move if I've ever seen one. Of course, the biggest question with Ojulari is how he fits into Vic Fangio's system. Can he drop into coverage? That's a legitimate concern, but if you go back and watch the film, he actually looks more natural in coverage than guys like Josh Sweat or Bryce Huff. His biggest weakness? Run defense. But again, this is Fangio's system. If anyone can coach him up and put him in positions to succeed, it's the Eagles' defensive staff. And speaking of the Eagles' coaching staff, here's something not enough people are talking about. While the roster saw some changes, the defensive coaching staff remained completely intact. That means continuity, development, and another year for players to grow under familiar leadership. How many teams can say that after having a top-ranked defense? Exactly. Now let's talk about the offensive line because, yeah, there were some losses. The departure of Fred Johnson might not seem like a big deal, but with Lane Johnson getting older and depth always being a concern, the Eagles are clearly thinking ahead. That's why they've been looking at young linemen in the draft, including Oregon's Josh Conerly Jr. and Purdue's Marcus Bohm. Conerly is especially interesting. He's young, just 21, and still developing, but he has the kind of athletic profile that fits what Philly loves in its linemen. He started out as a running back before switching to offensive line, and while he's not perfect, he struggles with anchoring against power rushers. His upside is huge. And here's something to consider. Lane Johnson isn't going anywhere right now, but how many times have we seen the Eagles draft an offensive lineman early and let them develop behind a veteran? This could be that kind of situation, but that's not the only interesting draft target. The Eagles also hosted NC State's Anthony Belton and Iowa State's Jalen Travis for visits. Belton, nicknamed Escalade for his size and agility, could be a late third-round steal. And Travis? The dude is 6 feet 8 inches, 340 pounds. He's got insane length, but his fundamentals need some work. The Eagles' coaching staff might see him as a project, but with Jeff Stoutland in charge, we've seen Philly turn raw prospects into top-tier linemen before.
Now, we can't talk about the Eagles without mentioning the biggest controversy of the offseason, the NFL's attempt to ban the tush push. Look, the Packers are pushing this rule change under the guise of player safety. But let's be real, it's because they can't stop it. The NFL even did a study on the play and found that not a single player was injured running it last season. But of course, when the Eagles perfect something that other teams can't replicate, the league wants to change the rules. And Green Bay wasn't the only team trying to shake things up. The Lions proposed removing automatic first downs for defensive holding and illegal contact, which feels a little too convenient after their playoff loss. They also suggested a rule that will allow wild card teams to be seeded higher than division winners based on record, which, let's be honest, seems like they're preparing for a tougher NFC North. But the one rule change that actually makes sense? The Eagles' proposal to make regular season and postseason overtime rules the same. Right now, if a team scores a touchdown in regular season overtime, the game is over. But in the playoffs, both teams get a possession no matter what. Philly wants consistency, and honestly, it's hard to argue against that. So, with all that said, where do you stand on these offseason moves? Are the Eagles making the right bets with their low-risk, high-reward signings? Is Zach Bond's return enough to stabilize the defense? And how do you feel about the NFL's push to ban the tush push? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this is going to be a huge season for the Birds. And here's where things get even more interesting, because while the Eagles have made some solid signings and are keeping their core intact, there are still major questions about what's next. What's Howie Roseman's next move? Could we see another trade? And what's the plan for the draft? Let's start with the elephant in the room, depth at key positions. Yes, bringing back Zach Bond is huge, and Azeez Ojulari could be a sneaky great pickup, but the Eagles still need to make sure they have enough pass-rushing firepower. Josh Sweat is gone, and while Ojulari is a nice addition, he's not a guaranteed game-changer. This is where the draft comes in. And if you've been paying attention to Philly's top 30 visits, you know the Eagles are already setting their sights on reinforcements. One of the names that keeps popping up is Alabama's Dallas Turner. Now, if you're not familiar with Turner, here's what you need to know. He's fast, explosive, and can get to the quarterback in a hurry. He's also a guy that fits perfectly in Vic Fangio's system. There's a reason he's projected to go in the first round, and if the Eagles are serious about bolstering their pass rush, he could be the guy. But what about the secondary? That's another area that still has some concerns. Darius Slay isn't getting any younger, and while the Eagles have some young talent at cornerback, they need more long-term solutions. That's why someone like Iowa's Cooper DeJean could be on their radar. DeJean is a playmaker. He's got the versatility to play corner or safety, and his football IQ is through the roof. The Eagles love guys who can play multiple positions, and DeJean fits that mold perfectly. And here's the thing, Howie Roseman isn't afraid to make bold moves in the draft. We've seen him trade up, trade back, and do whatever it takes to get the guys he wants. So don't be surprised if the Eagles pull off something unexpected on draft night. Now, let's shift gears for a second and talk about another major storyline, the offensive line. We already touched on the possibility of drafting Lane Johnson's eventual replacement, but what about the interior? The Eagles have been scouting versatile linemen, and that's no accident. Jason Kelce's retirement is a massive loss, and while Cam Jurgens is expected to take over at center, the Eagles need to make sure they have enough depth across the line. One name to watch? Duke's Graham Barton. He's another guy who can play multiple positions, and Philly loves versatility. If the Eagles want to ensure their O-line remains dominant for years to come, adding a guy like Barton makes a ton of sense. But let's not forget about the running back situation.